So the Arcanist right now, if you look at the damage dealing skill line, what's wrong with the damage dealing skill line? Okay, both PvE and PvP perspective. From a PvE perspective, it doesn't have really any powerful dot at all. The #1 most powerful dot is Rune of Displacement, but guess what? That tooltip, 20,000 magic damage, if you look at this here, it's just about as much as Entropy. And if we take the Morph, we'll take Structured Entropy. It's not very good, plus Structured Entropy gives you a heal. The dot is very, very weak in comparison to other dots, especially like Trap Beast. Outperform it. That's really your only dot. And then you have an instance-based main spammable, which is pretty good. And then you have the Tentacular Dread. Isn't a dot, it's a debuff. I mean, right now it's not parsing very high. You're talking 15, 10,000 DPS behind every class. Partly because you just don't have a whole lot of dots to carry the damage, and this Tentacular Dread debuff is not so significant that it outweighs all the damage from what other classes are able to provide. In PvP, you don't have something that is bursty, that has a delayed mechanic. Think about Blast Bones, think about Deep Fissure, think about Haunting Curse, right? Where's the burst coming from? Sure, you have a beam, but someone can bash it, someone can stun you. You're gonna be like standing in crap and need to get out of it, both in PvE and PvP. So it's an interesting mechanic, and I commend the developers for trying something different, but as it stands right now, it's just not usable in actual real content. So you don't have like a real big burst tool. Your main spammable doesn't have any component to be super bursty. The Tentacular Dread doesn't really provide you that much oomph. So from a damage perspective, both in PvE and PvP, it's extraordinarily weak. For PvP, I rely on a bunch of proc sets and just kind of play it simple. Not to mention that this other morph has technically an execute, but it only scales to 100%. And then if you look at the tooltip on the damage, I mean, it's okay. It's not even as much as a main spammable. And it costs 0.3 seconds to use it. It's a channel. And I don't mean to pick on the class necessarily, but this is what people need to know. The Unblinking Eye Ultimate, they did buff up a little bit for PvP, it's pretty good, but if you're just a sweat, you just kind of run out of the way and you're fine. So far, that's really what's wrong with the damage part of the class and why it's so weak right now. It has really good passives, but you really need hard-hitting dots. And like the 1-bar build, people are saying the 1-bar build's good. I would love to see a parse over 80,000 damage for this class in a 1-bar build. You're going to be spending all your global cooldowns trying to get Tentacular Dread 3 Cruxes and get the debuff. Heavy attack builds, you want to sit there and constantly do heavy attacks, not use global cooldowns. Otherwise, take it off and don't use Oaken Soul and use another type of build. And it really incentivizes you to keep and maintain this. And then you have to use 3 Rune Blades to actually even get the big, huge damage buff. If we look over in the tanking line, the Tank Ultimate is actually fantastic for PvP. It's not for PvE, right? Barrier is objectively better. PvP, it's pretty good because you can slot whatever you want in your back bar and have a really good, strong defensive alternate, not need Sword and Board or Resto Staff ultimate. The healing is a bit deceptive, but the buffs are fantastic. The burst healing, it really almost doesn't have burst healing, which I'll get to a little bit later. It wants you to use this goofy shield ability. It really wants you to use this goofy shield ability. This particular skill here, your Fate Woven Armor is fantastic. In fact, this right here creates like Cruxes passively, great for PvP because you don't even have to slot a skill to build Cruxes when you're taking damage. It also can be used for a 1-bar build if you wanted to build passive Cruxes while you're taking damage. This block mitigation, good for a tank, but where's your pull? Where's your Dragon Knight Talons? Right, you have Tentacular Dread, which is immobilization. 1, is hard to aim. 2, it drops your block. And then 3, it's not in a 360 radius. You don't have a pull, so as a tank, you're relying upon doing your Fighter's Guild ability here. Silver Leash, this just completely drains your stamina. Sure, you have a lot of buffs and debuffs, which is true. Like you have this thing right here, Rune of Colorless Pool, so you get minor brittle, minor vulnerability. Well, actually, you can get those buffs in other sources as well. It seems really nice because you can get it in one ability and it's instance-based. Great PvP stun, but in all actuality, those buffs you can get in other sources. Rune Guard of Freedom's nice because you can get minor resolve and minor protection. And then there's a way to get minor breach as well, right here with this Fate Woven Armor. That's good, but there's nothing in here that makes it stand out like absolute god mode for tanking. Tank-wise, passives are good. Minor evasion, are you gonna use it over Dragon Knight? Probably not. You have a lot more CC, a lot more control. Necro? Probably not. You got major vulnerability built in. The entire premise of the build is really trying to get you to use Cruxes, and especially as a healer, because this right here, Fated Fortune, increasing your critical damage and critical healing by 12% for 7 seconds when you use or gain a Crux. So what ends up happening is you essentially have to build up Cruxes and spend them to maintain this huge crit healing bonus that you get to make your heals very good. How do you dump your Cruxes? Well, really wants you to use the beam. We've talked about the beam. Try spraying a little like garden hose type heal on a pug group. So this is not really usable. And then you go to this skill here, this shield. It wants you to use this to dump your Cruxes too. There's one more where you can dump your Cruxes. So let's take a look. You got a shield here that grants 7,092 damage for 6 seconds. Well, why would I use that when I could just go to Resto Staff and use Blessing of Protection? It's objectively stronger. Sure, you could front load a shield, but it goes away in 6 seconds. It's gonna get shoot up right away. And then Bastion even pumping it up, it's not even that good. And again, you're bringing something to the raid like this here, Minor Courage, the Arcanist domain. So that could free up something for your tank to use a different gear set and so forth, not using Yalacrins. The mobility tool right now is just not that effective. So the tank in and of itself and the healer are the two strongest aspects of it right now as a support because of the buffs and stuff. But you can technically get those other buffs another way. And the problem with the burst healing is you either have to slot goofy different heals not in your class kit, or slot like 2 or 3 heals like I did in PvP to survive. I'm very tanky in PvP. So you have to stack basically 3 heals, and this is not gonna be friendly for new players. They're gonna make some changes for it, and it needs a lot. In summary, this is what, if you're watching developers, this is what I recommend doing. You need a god tier damage over time that actually hits really hard, like a Dragonite's Dot, like one of the pets for the Sorcerer, like Twisting Path for the Nightblade. You get it. Something really chunky. Number 2, you need a burst damage skill that is delayed. Think Haunting Curse. Think Blast Bones. Think Deep Fissure. Or you need something like Molten Whip for the Dragonite, or Concealed Weapon, Spectral Bow that just chunks people. Something really bursty. That's what you would need to solve damage. You also need to raise up Tentacular Dread DPS significantly if you're not going to lean into dots and you want a different playstyle. You'll also need to make Fate Carver have a heal component with it, or new players will absolutely get melted using this build. Or damage mitigation and or both, or it's going to be very hard for people to actually get this off. As a tank, I think you need a pull, a magic base pull. And one morph that is magic, one morph that's stamina that you can basically pick yourself. The shield needs to be basically pump it up a little bit more, I think, to be a little bit more usable. And then for healing, we got to get a burst heal that's better than basically combat prayer. If I look at the tooltip, and combat prayer is just, this is comparatively is just a noodle, I'm just not going to use it. And the ultimates need some rework. I don't want to burst everyone's bubble about the class. This is basically an objective hot take on the big downsides of it. I've played tank, I've played healer, I've played DPS, I've non-stop PvP'd with it. I love the look and the feel. I think they're onto something different and unique. But right now as it stands, not very good 1-bar build, very difficult to survive solo PvE, lower DPS than every other class in PvE, decent tank and a healer, that's what you have. Now, we don't want the class to be so overpowered you have to buy it. And we do have a long PTS cycle, and hopefully they make some changes. It needs a lot of gas. A lot of gas to compare to some of these other classes. It looks cool. It's brand new, so it's fun. It's shiny. It's green, just like my jacket here or whatever. Hopefully we got 5 or 6 weeks to sort it out. Give it a little bit more damage, a little bit more burst, healing, and damage. And this class will be a home run.